Okay, right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. It's nice to see you all. I'll start off just with housekeeping, things like we're not expecting a fire alarm to go off. So if it does go off, we need to evacuate through those double doors over there. We have some apologies this evening. We have apologies from Councillor Smalley, Councillor Hook and Councillor Waters. Okay, so first item on the agenda is declaration of interests. Does any committee members have any interests to declare? No, okay. All right, in that case, agenda item 2 is to approve the minutes from the meeting held on the 8th of August. Is everyone happy to approve them as an accurate record? Can't see any shaking heads, so everyone happy? Excellent, I'll sign those. Okay, agenda item 3, public participation. We have several people who have come to join us. Oh, Councillor Rose?
Sorry, just matters arising from the minutes.
Sure, go ahead.
Just at the public participation in the last meeting, there was a point around William Stores asking a few specific questions around tinted windows and the Hackney Carriage situation. And the Hackney Carriage situation is covered by this agenda, but I just wanted to check if that conversation was had and it was followed up on, basically.
Yes, no, I have been in contact with the public participant from the last meeting, and I think he's registered to speak this evening as well. Where's my list? Yes, he is. Yes. So yeah, we'll follow up on all of that. Don't worry. Anything else? Okay, in that case, we'll move on to public participation. Yes, we've got 4 people registered to speak. Everyone has 3 minutes each. We'll start with the remote speaker, which is Flick Williams. Can you hear us, Flick?
Yes, good afternoon.
Hi. Yes, you have 3 minutes, so please go ahead in your own time.
With regard to wheelchair accessible taxis in the city, the situation is deteriorating. Department of Transport figures show that York now has only 90 WAV taxis, whereas it had 112 in March 2020. I anticipate the unmet demand survey you will undertake next year will highlight an even worse situation than that uncovered previously. My inbox is full of disabled people complaining about the taxi situation, from lack of ability to book in advance, inability to get a taxi to hospital appointments, which are inflexible, and the poor attitude of some operators to disabled people. I see it is recommended that members are asked to approve option 2 as a means of making swifter progress in getting more taxis on the roads, and that is to be welcomed, but I fear this is insufficient to really change the situation and more creative solutions are needed. North Yorkshire Council have, for example, allowed WAV taxis to be used after the usual 10-year cut-off, hoping that this will make them financially more attractive. Do we really need to be so prescriptive? I urge the committee to be more inventive in seeking ways that might remove the current barriers to getting more vehicles licensed. Because in truth, this is a direct clash, a conflict between the council's overarching objectives of mitigating climate change on the one hand and equalities, human rights and health and well-being on the other. So far, disabled people's ability to travel and participate on an equal basis is coming off the loser. Edinburgh also allows only ultra-low emission vehicles to be used, but they gave direct financial assistance to the taxi trade to acquire them, whereas other cities such as Bradford, Hull, Doncaster and Sheffield are allowing the use of second-hand petrol and diesel WAVs in recognition of the unmet demand situation. New EV WAVs are expensive, ranging from £31,500 to £80,000, and it is not expected that those prices will fall owing to the scarcity of the minerals required for batteries. I fear there are further problems ahead with regard to safety. A rather inconvenient truth is that one of the vehicles on your list, the Vauxhall Vivaro e-Life, is under scrutiny. One issued under Motability to a family with a disabled child in Cornwall recently caught fire whilst parked on the drive and burned down their terraced home. Safety of disabled people who cannot evacuate a vehicle quickly is paramount.
You've got 30 seconds left.
A word on cafe licensing. Enforcement now appears to be a hit and miss affair. Unless you enforce the conditions you have set, disabled people will continue to be discriminated against by the obstruction you previously allowed. The onus should not be on us as disabled people to constantly report infractions. The reply to my latest LBA, due on 29th of August, but received yesterday, lays blame for obstruction of the footway at the door of the business. No, the council is the highway authority and needs to act accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that contribution and for taking the time to come and talk to us. As you say, unmet demand. We've identified that there is unmet demand, especially for wheelchair accessible vehicles. And we know that for as long as that demand goes unmet, it has real life impacts on people, especially disabled people. So thank you for bringing your ideas to us. We're always open to ideas on how to improve the situation. So thank you very much for that. And I'll get back to you on the issue of cafe licensing, because when we get to the work plan later, that might well be something that people feel we should have a look at the policy and how effectively it's being implemented. So thank you very much. We will move on now to the next speaker, who I think is here in person. So you're welcome to come and join us at the table where there's a microphone. William Swords. And yeah, you have 3 minutes and start in your own time.
Good afternoon. This is the third meeting I've attended, and it's my intention to continue to attend all future meetings. And I'm going to be staying till the end of the meeting, and I'm happy to answer any questions and to engage in any discussions, because 3 minutes is just not enough time. I have a lot of experience in taxiing and in York, and I'm happy to share my experience and knowledge. I'm pleased that you are about to review the policy on new taxi plates. One of the areas I would like to raise is in Annex 1 of the notes, and it's to do with examples of wheelchair vehicles. I'm not sure that the figures are actually correct. Electric wheelchair vehicles are not easy to source and start at £50,000. You can't get one at £31,000. And they go up to £86,000. A standard wheelchair vehicle is currently available second-hand from £10,000 upwards, and you can spend as much as you want. Those cars are Euro 6 compliant. The only thing they're not is electric. Electric wheelchair cars are very difficult. They're not fit for purpose at this moment in time. The council plan states that a fair and thriving and green economy for all. I am not sure how a driver will be able to thrive having to spend more than £50,000 on a vehicle. It's a barrier to putting new vehicles on. It's not a plus. Once again, I'm going to ask you to reconsider the policy on issuing of new Hackney plates. Electric vehicles may well be the future, but it's too early for taxis. The infrastructure is not in place. The lack of range and the cost make it not viable. It's just not viable for a taxi driver. I want to mention tinted windows again in taxis. What is the policy? What is the council's policy on tinted windows, and why do we have it? Drivers are wanting to change their vehicles to newer and greener vehicles. They're being put off by having to spend hundreds into thousands of pounds on changing perfectly good factory fitted tinted windows to clear ones. Why? And my final point is to do with wheelchair accessible taxis. We need more wheelchair accessible taxis. However, the bigger issue is not just the ability, the bigger issue is the ability to pre-book
30
one.
seconds.
Having a wheelchair accessible car sat on a taxi rank does not provide access to the passengers that need them. There needs to be a system in place that allows people to book, to pre-book. I'm an operator of a taxi company, and I am fully aware of the problems on an hourly basis for disabled passengers getting a taxi. It's nigh on impossible to pre-book a wheelchair taxi with any taxi company in York. It's okay being it once if you do manage to get into town, it's probably quite easy to get back. Get into an appointment at the hospital is virtually impossible. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Thank you again for taking the time to come and speak to us.
Okay.
We'll talk again tomorrow.
Yes.
What you've said about the vehicle licenses, we will bear that in mind when we get to agenda item 5 and discuss that. The council's policy about window tinting can be found in our statement of taxi licensing policy. So that's publicly available, and all licensed drivers should have that. No, I'm sure you all know off by heart. We are currently reviewing that policy, and everyone in the local trade will be consulted, as well as all
But
user groups. And
my only thing with that is we don't need to consult. I read it out last time from the government's white paper, what they call it.
yeah,
There's no need to
part-
consult on
transport.
tinted windows. We can decide we don't need tinted windows without consultation.
Well, the whole policy to be updated needs to go out to consultation, and we'll be doing that very soon. So that'll be the best opportunity to.
Again, it's a barrier to newer cars. People are driving around in Euro 5s when they could be in Euro 6.
And the issue of pre-booking, it's an issue. I think there's work ongoing. Council officers working on it. I know the local trade is working on it. We'll come back to it. Thank you for your time. Okay, the next speaker, again, who's here in person, is Gwen Swinburne. Yeah, come and join us at the table, and there's a microphone there, and you have 3 minutes. You can go ahead and start in your own time.
Just a health and safety issue first. Council policy is to have the windows open, I understood. Just so you know. Don't worry, it's fine. I just wanted to remind people we're supposed to have some air in this room. Well.
Only by this one.
Oh.
Anyway, whenever you're ready to start with your
Thank you,
prepared
Rachel.
comments, please.
Sorry, Chair. Thank you, Chair. 2 governance issues, if I may. I am very uncomfortable with the governance arrangements that have led to 2 licensing hearings, having only 1 party on the panel. It came to a head with the Roxy application, where our MP lobbied strongly against it with neighbours. No Labour members sat on this panel either. Whether there was a valid reason or not, perceptions matter. I was very concerned with the position it put you in, Chair, so looked for the laws, rules or guidance that banned non-predetermined ward members from sitting on the panels. I drew a blank. It seems yet another local rule, like banning you from seeing pink papers on committees you don't sit on, or even attending the discussion. May I ask this committee receives a report to the next meeting to resolve this? It is for you to decide, not the staff. I trust the ward councillors to act as they should, just as they do in planning. Secondly, and lastly, members, the council issues many licenses. Only some come to you. Most are delegated to officers with no member oversight or even performance or complaints reports. Some of these delegated licenses are particularly concerning. The licenses for scaffolding and skips, for example. May I ask that for the next or following committee, you ask for an oversight report that lists every license issued by the council, the departmental responsibility, and what reports, if any, go anywhere, executive scrutiny, or if none, say none. It is time members had some form of oversight of performance of all our licensing for our safety and to ensure the law is being followed and to ensure equity and income. In the case of the 2 examples I raised, it seems clear to me these are neither being issued nor policed as they should be. Where this committee could have oversight, I think it should. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Swinburne, for taking the time to come and talk to us. I will ask the legal department to write up some legal advice on those 2 issues you raised about members of a hearing panel being from the same party, and on the issue of panel members sitting on to determine applications in their own ward, and that will be circulated to the whole committee, and I'll forward it to you as well. And then on everything else you raised, you'll see we have a work plan added to our agenda now. So as a committee, we'll do some work planning, and we'll take everything you've said into account when we come to that agenda item. So yes, thank you. Welcome to go back into the public area. I've seen a couple of hands up. We don't usually, but
if I heard the question, the query correctly, it was what is stopping everybody from being on the licensing committee like everybody is on the planning committee? That was, so it's a different way of looking at it. That was all for the clarification, Chair.
So I think, yes, I think, so what you mean is that in licensing, we don't determine applications in our own ward, but on planning, we do determine applications in our own ward.
That's right.
Yeah,
Thank you, Chair.
yes, I'll ask legal to write something for us. Councillor Rose?
Yeah, it's just a point of correction, I guess, clarification, that I was available for the Roxy licensing hearing, and I was there from start to finish in person, and I was the backup. It's just the cards fell how they fell, but it wasn't anything about party politics or anything to do with that. And the licensing committee is apolitical, as we know, around the rules. So yeah, just to correct something that's been floating online. But yeah,
We'll put it all in writing for the whole committee and send it to you as well. Thank you very much for your time. We have one more public speaker, again in person, Peter Monk-Steele. Are you able to come and join us at the table, please? Or would you like the microphone over there? All right, excellent, yeah. Come and join us.
Hi.
Yeah, you have 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay.
I'll let you know when you've got 30 seconds left, and yeah, just go ahead and start in your own
Okay,
time.
well,
Thank you.
some of the things that I was going to raise have already been spoken about. A couple of other things. You know, like the taxis in York, do they have to take some sort of like knowledge test? You know, like so that you get in, because I'm a visually impaired person, and the driver, and I've got friends that are also visually impaired, and the driver will say, where you going? Is this the way? And it's like, well, don't drive. Oh, you can't tell them off. Do they not have like in London, they have a knowledge test they have to take so many streets? Is that not possible for York? So that you get in a taxi, you give them an address, they know where they're going, because you might not be familiar with York.
Would you like to finish your 3 minutes and then we'll respond? Is that all right?
Yeah, and there's another thing. I do have a lot of difficulty trying to pre-book taxis, or sometimes you can't pre-book a taxi if you want to be spontaneous, if you're being social, or it's not possible. And certain times of the day you can't get them, like before 10 and after 2 o'clock. And in the evenings, and again, because I'm not just a wheelchair user, I'm also visually impaired. I'm worried that I'm going to get stranded. What happens if I get stranded and I can't get a cab home? Whose responsibility is there any procedures in place for getting me home, or someone in my situation? If I can't get a wheelchair accessible taxi, would I have to ring the police? Or would, if I couldn't get a cab home because a lot of them don't have, or is there a way that I can, is there a way you can contact drivers that aren't through a firm, like, could you not contact drivers, like send them a text, if the wheelchair accessible drivers, could you not send them a text to say that I'm a wheelchair user and I'd like to have a taxi, please? Is that, or would that be a data protection thing? Because I'm worried, and it's also the lack of accessible taxis. It's actually having quite an adverse effect, not just on me, but other people that I'm friends with, family. And you can have a good evening and then have to worry about getting a cab home. You can only get, and it's a struggle, but I have had to, as a last resort, get into ordinary cars, and I've had my wheelchair broken. Or some drivers are not properly trained, especially when it comes to my visual impairment. So is there do drivers have any disability awareness training?
Is that everything you wanted to say?
For now, but if that's run out of time, there's other things.
No, you have another 30 seconds. I just
have
wasn't
another
sure if
30
you still had,
seconds.
more.
And I'm just sure, had you got any sort of like resolutions to this problem of the lack of wheelchair accessible taxis? Because it's all well and good, I've noticed, providing for school kids that have got disabilities, but what about us adults? So if I, in the future, if I get a job or whatever, how am I gonna, or I've done courses and I have had to put myself in danger getting the bus when it's dark, or I've had to spend extra time, waste time just getting a bus because I can't get a wheelchair accessible taxi. There should always be some available to the public if you need them.
You just want to be the same.
I want to be the same as everybody else. I don't like being discriminated against. And the other week I had to wait 30 minutes, 35 minutes at the railway station in the rank. This was about
Another minority.
Half-
that
half
is
six.
discriminated against, and
But
you know,
30, about between 40, about 30 and 30, between 30 and 45 minutes approximately to get a wheelchair accessible taxi.
You've had more than 3 minutes now.
I'm sorry.
But no, that's absolutely fine. Thank you so much for coming and speaking to us and, you know, explaining to us how you're impacted by the unmet demand that we have, especially for wheelchair accessible vehicles. We know it's a really serious issue, but thank you for taking the time to come and, you know, explain how it impacts you in your everyday life. What I'll do is I'll ask officers, because we've got your contact details from you registering to speak. So
Yes.
I'll ask officers to contact you to explain everything about the knowledge test that local drivers have to pass, and the other training to do with accessibility and all that training. I'll ask them to contact you, and in whatever way is the most
Thanks, yeah.
accessible for you. We'll talk to you about what format
Yeah.
that should take, and we will address some of the things to do with unmet demand later in the agenda, and it's going to have to be an ongoing conversation while we try to figure out how to resolve these issues. So yes, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome to go back and join the public area.
Thanks.
So that is all the speakers we have registered today. Was there any of the public speakers wanting to leave now, or are you all staying for the rest of the meeting? We're all staying? Excellent. In that case, we can crack on with the next agenda item without having to take a pause for people to leave. So the next item on the agenda, agenda item 4, is a report about taxi licensing delegated decisions. So I will pass over to officers to introduce this report. If you could introduce yourselves first, and then introduce the report, and then we'll have questions.
Thank you, Chair. My name's Dave Cowley. I'm the Taxi Licensing Manager for City of York Council. Agenda 4 item is a report providing statistical information regarding the delegated decisions that officers have taken under the taxi licensing team under the Council's constitution. The report contains information on decisions that have been undertaken from the 1st of January 2022 to the 1st of September 2023. All officer decisions are taken and done so with regards to the Council's policy, the conditions and the application criteria approved by the Licensing Committee in accordance with the Council's constitution. A little bit of background: in England, outside of London, Hackney Carriage and private hire licenses are issued by the district councils to control the safe operation of Hackney Carriage and private hire vehicles being used for hire and reward on public roads. It is the council's responsibility to help ensure that the correct standards of safety and conformity are satisfied by all licensed drivers, vehicles and operators. The overriding principle is safety of the travelling public, and we are committed to contributing to the high quality of a transport service and the continuous development and improving with the taxi service. The taxi licensing team is self-financing the set fees to administer the functions as defined within controlling legislation. We have the responsibility of issuing licenses to Hackney Carriage drivers and vehicles and private hire drivers, vehicles and operators. Particular attention is paid to ensuring that all licence holders are fit and proper to hold a licence. All applicants undertake a criminal record disclosure, DBS, to ensure to check for the existence of any content of any criminal records. All applicants are also checked against the National Register for refusals, revocations and suspensions. All applicants must pass a safeguarding and knowledge test, which includes how to recognise and report the signs of abuse, customer care, equalities, knowledge of routes around the city and other licensing requirements. Drivers must also pass a driving assessment and have fewer than seven penalty points. Before granting any vehicle licenses, on-site inspections are conducted to ensure that the vehicle meets both the MOT standards and certain criteria is met with our current legislation and conditions. Further proactive enforcement activities undertaken by means of on-street inspections, investigations and operator-based visits to ensure compliance with the legal requirements and the licensing conditions, whilst ensuring the comfort, safety and appearance of vehicles. Currently, City of York Council licence 240 Hackney carriage drivers, 180 Hackney carriage vehicles, 457 private hire drivers, 443 private hire vehicles, and 48 private hire operators. Table 1 within the report provides information in relation to the applications, the refusals, the suspensions and revocations from January the 1st to December the 31st in 2022 and the 1st of January 2023 to the 1st of September 2023. The second table within the report provides information regarding the refusals and revocation decisions that officers have taken between those set times. Between January 2022 and December 2022, 4 licenses were refused and 12 licenses were revoked. Between the 1st of January 2023 and September 2023, no licenses were refused and 9 licenses were revoked. Table 3 within the report sets out information regarding driver suspensions. 18 drivers were suspended in January 2022 and 12 drivers between January 2023 and September 2023. Members will note that the largest categories of suspension in the report relates to complying with conditions. These specifically relate to failure to complete a DBS requirement within the timescales. The licenses, or a lot of these licenses, were not renewed in the majority of the suspensions as it was coming up to the renewal of those licenses and people had moved out of the industry. The increased numbers for 2023 are due to medical reasons, so the expiry of Group 2 medicals, and the majority of which have now been rectified. Table 4 within the report produces information relating to the appeals. Currently in 2023, we have 4 appeals compared to the 8 appeals in 2022. And information is provided against whether it was a refusal to grant, against a revocation, against conditions, or against a suspension.
Before you move on, do you want to just, you were going to clarify the numbers in that table on
Page
page 11? Yeah.
The 2023 report, there was 4 licenses refused or revoked, should I say. The information is slightly wrong. They should say that it's 1 withdrawn. That's a typo error, and 3 are still ongoing, which makes up the 4. There is also further proactive work that's been taking place by the licensing team. We have secured funding from the North Yorkshire Police and Crime Commissioner's Safer Street Funds to assist in the reduction of violence against women and girls. This funding has been allocated to 2 separate incentives to assist the trade and the public. Currently, we are funding free knowledge and safeguarding tests for anyone wishing to apply to become a driver until the end of December 2023. There is also a limited funding available for in-car CCTV systems, again until the end of December 2023. Along with the annual inspections of each licensed vehicles, officers also undertake multi-agency operations throughout the year with the North Yorkshire Police, British Transport Police, the Driver Vehicle Standards Agency, Immigration and other licensing authorities, with a view to ensuring compliance within the legal requirements and licensing conditions. To date, 7 operations have been undertaken since 2022. There are further operations planned up to the end of December. Further proactive enforcement activity is undertaken by means of on-street inspections. This is due to an increased capability, which was supported by members in 2022, where we got further enforcement officers. In 2022, 307 additional inspections or on-street inspections were undertaken on vehicles within the City of York area. Any vehicles which had compliance issues or were identified were enforced by means of suspension or rectification notices. Any issues with out-of-town vehicles were also reported to the primary licensing authority. I can tell you that currently in 2023, officers have undertaken 241 on-street compliance inspections. The decisions taken by officers are in accordance with the council's constitution, the council's policy, and the criteria that's approved by licensing committee. And every case has been judged proportionately on its own merits. There has been no successful appeals against officer decisions in the time period referred to in paragraph 2 of this report. Therefore, I submit this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions about the delegated decisions or any of the information in the report? Councillor Rose?
Yeah, I've got a few, but I'll chip them one off at a time. The point 20 talks about the Group 2 medical report expiries. Just wondering if you could clarify what sort of things fall into that category for more design.
Yeah, there is a time scale for drivers to undertake a medical process. There's a certain time scale which is approved by the local GP. So if the GP says that they should undertake a medical every 5 years, what happens is we would write to every driver prior to that license, so the medical being required. It's usually within 2 to 3 months, asking them to undertake a further medical. We also then send a reminder a month before the medical is due to expire, to again just advise them that they need to submit a medical form forward. It is a statutory requirement to undertake that. And as it stands at the moment, anybody who fails to comply with that, we tend to review their circumstances, which may lead to suspension.
So supplementary on that, is that, in your opinion, due to people not engaging early enough, or is that due to pressures in healthcare, meaning that it's difficult to get that checked?
There are, should I say, we've not had many issues in relation to GPs not undertaking medicals. Where a GP has somebody booked in for a medical, and evidence is provided of that, it's usually within a couple of days of the expiry of the other medical. Allowances can be made.
Councillor Kilbane?
Thanks, Chair. I've got a few questions as well, David. And thanks very much for the report. And thanks very much for all you're doing to keep the taxi users of the city safe. Just a couple of questions. The table on page 17. What does the category sexual mean? What's it refer to?
Yeah, these are based on either sexual offences or information in relation to serious sexual inappropriateness.
Okay, so and when I'm looking at the revocation, so if a complaint is made against a taxi driver operating within the local authority area, but they're licensed in a different local authority area, how do we know what happens to that complaint and subsequent actions on the driver's license?
Yeah, in 2022, there was a new piece of legislation came in, which we have to, if we receive information regarding a driver that doesn't work in our area, we would notify the primary licensing area of that information. They have to respond to that within 20 days to tell us what decision they have made on that license.
Yeah.
So if we got information from North Yorkshire Police that it was a driver from some other authority, but they also held a license with us, we have an obligation to share that information with the other authority and put them in contact with North Yorkshire Police.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is if you've got somebody that's licensed by another authority and they're working in our area and somebody makes a complaint against them, what happens to that complaint and how do we know what happens to that complaint, I guess?
There's a safeguarding policy that came in 2022, which we actually provide that information to the other authority. So there's a set format that we provide the information in a report to that other authority, and the other authority has a duty to respond within 20 days.
So would we be able to see those figures in the same ways that we can see the figures within our authority?
We can do. We don't have that information at the moment in relation to this report. This is specifically relating to York licensed drivers.
Okay. And my final question, Chair, if I may. I've received a number of complaints from taxi drivers, the on-street enforcement often happen, which obviously, you know, fully support needs to happen, and is often the best way of detecting, you know, in vehicles that shouldn't be on the road. But the complaint is that it happens quite often at 8 o'clock on a Friday night, which is kind of the peak time for making money, and the request that could theoretically be happening at times when it's not their peak times, because just in case people don't understand, the car is then taken off the road pretty much for the rest of that evening, and there's a loss of income to the driver.
We're reliant on the police. Obviously, the officers don't have the power to stop any vehicle. We do have an operational instruction, which means that any vehicle with passengers in is not usually checked. They would be presented with a ticket or a receipt to come up to wherever the checkpoint is after they've finished with the passengers. We also, when we're doing these checks, have put steps in place that once that vehicle is brought in, it's immediately checked, or it's checked within 5 or 10 minutes. If there are any significant issues of safety, unfortunately, that vehicle has to come off the road. Where that vehicle has passed that check, they will get a receipt for that check, and they're back out within probably 20 or 30 minutes of that check taking place.
Okay, thanks. I guess what they're asking is it cannot happen at peak times, but you're saying that's down to the availability
It's down
of
to
police.
it's down to the availability of police and other agencies. We do daytime operations as well, Councillor Kilburn.
Councillor Clark, did you have your hand up?
I will ask a question because yes, I did. It was kind of feeding on for that from the compliance tests. I mean, we heard earlier from some of the speakers how some of the taxi drivers don't seem to be to know where they're going. I have to speak anecdotally that this happened to me twice when on the few occasions that I've used taxis. I guess the test, the compliance test, seem to be about vehicles, but not about knowledge of the city. I mean, is there a way that could be tested, the compliance on that front? Please.
If we do get complaints in relation to drivers, we can actually retest the knowledge of any individual that complaints are made. With the testing as it stands at the moment, it is a comprehensive test, which has been presented to this committee previously. The pass mark for that test is 26 out of 30 questions. And there are a specific number of routes within that drivers have to ensure that they undertake. So they have to have that knowledge to ensure that they get through the test.
Thank you, Chair, initially for asking me this.
Councillor Mason, did you have your hand up?
Sorry. 47 operators seems high. I'm sure it's right, but it seems high, you know, when I think about how many taxi firms are in York. I just wondered how that's broken down. And the other question, obviously, that's private hire operators. I wondered how things like station taxis, how, you know, like is in the overall umbrella that sits over all the Hackney carriages that work for like the station rank, how that's kind of looked after.
Yeah, the operators at the moment, I haven't got the figures to hand, but I can give you an estimated calculation. There would be approximately 14 multi-vehicle operators that operate within the city with more than one vehicle. The rest of the operators would either have 1 or 2 vehicles operating from either a home address or some office address, which undertake specific runs. In relation to station taxis is a Hackney Carriage Association, which just uses Hackney carriages, so they are not licensed by us, but they do work very closely with the council to ensure standards.
Councillor Nichols?
Yeah, just to help us understand. On 25, you did 307 inspections. Does that mean that the 17 and 19 are the result of those inspections?
You mean the suspensions?
Yes, you've got.
No, the suspensions on the 17 and 19 are specifically relating to drivers, not vehicles.
So is there any information then about vehicles that failed?
Yes, we can provide that. I think that's in the next report that we're bringing to licensing committee, which is the enforcement stats.
Cool.
Thank you.
And sorry, on 23, you're giving free knowledge and safety and training. Why do we give free help to people who want to make a living? And what's the limited amount of free CCTV? Is that 112 or?
We will provide this funding in relation to the criteria which is in the report. Currently, I can tell you that we have provided 62 CCTV systems last year. We're currently in the process of providing another 30, which is the bit that's left out of the funding, which was allocated to that. And as it stands at the moment, we are looking at, or we are providing the free knowledge and safeguarding tests to encourage more drivers to come to the industry within York. There was a report that was presented last year from the nighttime economies industry, where they said there was a shortage of vehicles, predominantly in the nighttime economy, and therefore, after sort of post-COVID, we looked at incentives to try and get drivers back into the industry.
Does that answer your questions? Yeah. Councillor Rose?
Yeah, I'll finish mine off. The first question is, we've got the numbers here for 240 Hackney drivers, 457 private hire drivers, etc. Do you know roughly what the numbers are for people who aren't licensed by us operating the city, e.g. what percentage of spot checks suggests the ratio is between York and non-York?
Not to hand, but I can possibly get you that for the enforcement update, which we're going to present.
If that's possible, I don't know if you, off the top of your head, happen to know if it majority swings one way or the other.
I couldn't tell you at the moment.
Okay. And we've already touched on a lot of the specific bits on this, but in terms of the challenges we have with operators licensed elsewhere, what actions are ongoing aside from the spot checks at the moment in terms of trying to tackle things that aren't crimes and aren't on this paper in terms of revocation of licenses? Is there any other work that's going on to try and manage the challenges that we have with some of the perhaps less scrupulous but legal actions that we sometimes get from drivers from further afield?
Yeah, at this present time, we do work very, very closely with our neighbouring authorities, and the sharing of information in relation to drivers and obviously breaches in condition are shared within those authorities. So for an example, if we did a spot check on a vehicle which was under the West Yorkshire combined umbrella, so Calderdale, Kirklees, Leeds, Bradford, all our officers have delegated powers, which means that we can act as an officer for that authority. So for instance, if a driver wasn't wearing their badge, which is an offence under section 51 of the Act, we could report that driver back to that primary licensing authority for them to take any action that they saw fit.
I guess to pick two specific examples, situations around parking across the city and parking in places that are technically legal but are obstructive to for example, disabled members of the community, or block pavement access in various other ways, or where we have very different opinions to other authorities about the quality of drivers' requirements, and so their requirements allow something but our requirements don't. Are we, other than just asking nicely to other authorities who don't agree with us, is there any other action going on to try and tackle any of those ongoing challenges?
Yeah, currently what we're doing, or what I do, is I sit on a West Yorkshire licensing officer, a West Yorkshire managers meeting every month, where we're looking at trying to harmonise policies within the criteria, and every 6 months we have a meeting with the chairs of licensing and those authorities to look at harmonisation of policies.
All right, are there any more questions about this report or delegated decisions? Can't see any hands. Okay, in that case, we'll note the report and thank officers for the report and all the work contained within it. Thank you very much. And we'll move on to the next agenda item. Agenda item 5, which is about Hackney Carriage vehicle licenses and unmet demand. I'm aware that there are new members of the committee, and also there's a public meeting, and who knows, who might be watching. And so I'm going to start by asking for just a quick bit of background on unmet demand and how we got to this point. If you don't mind doing that first, and then go through the report and what your suggestions are to try and solve some of the problems we're having.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, a little bit of background in relation to Hackney carriage vehicles. The City of York Council currently limits the number of Hackney carriage vehicle licenses that we issue. As a result of that, the council is required to undertake what's classed as an unmet demand survey every 3 years. This is to establish if there is any need to deregulate that number or whether or not there are any unmet demands within the city. That unmet demand was undertaken, and as a result of that, information was provided that 7 new Hackney carriage vehicles were required within the city. Members then set the criteria for any new licenses that they issue, and the committee actually did this in 2022. That unmet demand survey does continue to roll out every 3 years to establish whether or not there is that need for more vehicles. So this report is to update members on the current situation in relation to the new Hackney carriage vehicle licenses, and invite members to instruct officers on an approach to meet the unmet demand survey for Hackney carriage vehicles. So members are asked to instruct officers in the issuing of 10 new Hackney carriage vehicles and its recommendations within. It's to enable officers to make a swift progression to ensure that new vehicles are placed on the road and meet the unmet demand for the Hackney carriage vehicles. On the 7th of June 2022, members of this committee considered a report in relation to the unmet demand for Hackney carriages and resolved that it to be recommended to the executive to make available 9 new Hackney carriage vehicles. There were 2 licenses that had not been renewed at the time, plus 7 additional licenses which were indicated in the report. That resolution was subsequently approved by the executive on the 28th of July 2022 and the council on the 20th of October 2022. Except in the progress, another license had become available, so it made 10 in total. The committee report for that is included within the background papers for this report. As a result of that, members set the criteria for Hackney carriage vehicles, which was to be issued to a black fully electric wheelchair accessible vehicle or a black plug-in electric petrol hybrid wheelchair accessible vehicle. These vehicles are purpose-built and have CO2 emissions of less than 50 grams per kilometre and can travel at least 112 kilometres, which is 70 miles, without any emissions at all. In addition to the London type vehicles, the LEVC, there are now a number of vehicles that are on the market which are capable of meeting the above requirements, examples of which have been identified by officers are in the Annex 1 of this report. The information that is there is provided by the Institute of Licensing and the, bear with me, it's the Office of Zero Emissions. The taxi licensing team hold a waiting list at the moment of 180 people. This is up from 157 in June 2022. As a result of members' approvals, the licenses were initially offered to applicants who were at the top of the Hackney carriage vehicle waiting list. Although there was some initial interest, it failed to materialise in any new licenses being granted. Potential applicants reported that the initial finance outlay, limited number of vehicles available, and concerns with reliability to the plug-in electric hybrid vehicles were reasons for not taking up a licence. It will recall that a public speaker has attended the last 2 regulatory committee meetings and raised concerns in the same lines. Members are also being invited to instruct officers to set clearer timescales or a clear timescale to help ensure the expressions of interests in new Hackney carriage vehicles and obviously get them on the road quicker. The options available in this report are for consideration are continue in the current position and contact in turn each person on the list asking if they wish to acquire a Hackney carriage vehicle licence for the vehicle type specified above. The proposals for the timescale is to confirm an interest in acquiring a vehicle within month of the letter of invitation, to place an order for a suitable vehicle within 2 months, and then obtain a vehicle and have it licensed within 4 months of the initial letter going out. Anyone choosing not to take an offer of a license or otherwise failing to comply with the timescales would be removed from the waiting list and invited to reapply, where they would be put on the bottom of the list. Option 2 within the report is to contact everybody on the waiting list simultaneously, seeking an expression of interest as to their position if a license was to be offered. We would also provide details of the specific vehicles and setting out the timescales as in option 1. From the responses that we got within the 1 month offer, we would then offer the available licenses to the 10 highest placed people on the waiting list who responded within the timescale, and they confirmed they're in a position to submit a vehicle for licensing in accordance with the requirements. And again, the proposals are in option 1 for the timescales. Anyone who doesn't express an interest or otherwise fails to comply with the timescales for acquiring a Hackney Carriage vehicle would again be removed from the list and invited to reapply, where they will be placed on the bottom of the list. Those who expressed an interest but are successful will move up the list for the future allocations. Option 3 within the list, members are to instruct officers to take a different way forward. Consultation was undertaken in respects of the previous reports to this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. So what I'm going to suggest we do is just have an opportunity, in case anyone has any questions, just to make sure everyone fully understands the situation and all the things we need to consider when deciding how to proceed. And then once everyone's asked all their questions, we can then discuss the best way to proceed out of this situation. All right, so does anybody have any questions? Councillor Rose?
Yeah, I guess one question that perhaps is not answerable, but we've had someone speak in public participation about the fact that Annex 1 may not be particularly accurate. I appreciate there's a difference between list prices and real prices, between what you can find online versus 10 months of waiting and going through all sorts of things. So, but I just wondered if you're able to comment on those points around viability of that price point.
Yeah, I mean, the Institute of Licensing has provided information in some other information which I brought with me today about the vehicles or wheelchair accessible electric vehicles which were available and prices as they are on the market. And they do range from 30,000 to 70,000 or 80,000. For brand new electric vehicles as well, there's also a grant that's available from the Office of Zero Emissions through the government, which is called a plug-in taxi grant, and applicants can apply for between £3,000 and £7,500 grant for new vehicles that are coming onto the road.
Can I just ask, are these new hands for new questions? Can I ask supplementary? You go ahead with your supplementary first then, Councillor Nicholl.
So do you know what the waiting time is? Because I mean, you walk into a garage and I mean, I wait 3 months for one car. So I mean, are we talking, because you've got a rule where you say you've got to do action within a certain time. Is it actually doable?
We have contacted some suppliers. Obviously, I can't produce names, but we have contacted some suppliers which say that they can have a vehicle on the road for January.
Councillor Clark, was your question supplementary as well, or a new one? Just go ahead then. I'll come back to mine.
No, it's about, I guess, the financing of, you know, the outlay. We've heard there's a significant barrier, and you know, £3,000 to £7,500 doesn't really cut it if you're paying between 50,000 and 80,000. So I'm just wondering what other kind of finance is in place, or how are taxi drivers, how do they finance the initial outlay? Do they borrow the money? Do they have other kinds of support? It's a question you may not be able to answer, but that was my supplementary. Thanks.
Yeah, I don't think I can answer that from a council side, but I know that there would be support available from other means.
Councillor Mason, this is a kind of supplementary question as well. Yeah, right, go ahead.
To the supplementary. If someone wanted to buy into the trade without getting a new licence, what would the kind of cost be? I know there used to be figures quoted of what it would cost if I wanted to sell a Hackney Carriage licence in York and what that would, you know, what that would fetch. I wonder how that pegs against the price of a new electric vehicle. If you're able to give that kind of commercial information.
It's a difficult one because, as you can appreciate, the council owns that plate for a vehicle. So the plates are free. You would hope that the transaction that's taking place is for the vehicle only, but we do understand that, you know, in some respects they are buying a business as a Hackney Carriage. I couldn't tell you what the rank values are at this present time. They have been fluctuating. It might be something that you know, trade members, which are sat at the end of the room, might be able to advise better on.
That is very closely related to what my question was going to be. The feedback that you've had that the initial financial outlay is what's preventing people from taking up the offer of a vehicle. Do you have an impression of whether that's people who genuinely are drivers and want to be able to invest in their own vehicle rather than having to rent one, or is it people who were on the list because they wanted the value of the plate to sell on? Do you have an idea of that?
I think it's a difficult one because we know that there are mixed sort of feedback at this present time. There are drivers that are on the list that are wanting to become top of that position to put a vehicle on. And we also know that there might be people that want to put the cheapest vehicle available to make a transaction in transferring that vehicle. So it's a very difficult one for us to answer at this present time. I don't know if you can do that, Matt.
Oh, yeah, Matt.
I was just going to add in, like, one of the benefits of option 2, if you like, is that it would send out, it would be, it's inviting everybody to apply. So you will have the opportunity, if you like, to people will make that decision as to whether they are in this for the investment. It will require considerable investment in the vehicle, and probably the way to get that investment back is to drive that vehicle around and earn your money back on it, and not to sell the plate for a quick win, sell the vehicle with a plate on it for a quick win to somebody, and make some money quickly. So I think that one of the benefits of option 2 is that it will get the licenses out to people who want to drive the vehicles around the city and earn the money back.
Councillor Nichols, I've seen your hand, but there's someone on the left had their hand up first, but I didn't see who it was. Councillor Kent and then Councillor Avillius, and then I'll come back to Nichols.
Thank you. Can you estimate how many people have already been contacted on the list so far out of the 180?
Yeah, it's been a long process, obviously, because we've had an initial interest from the sort of top 10, 11, 12 people. But then obviously when they've looked at the finance situations, they've all come back with different feedback. So we are currently in the 20s, I think, of round about 15 to 20, I believe.
And can I ask a supplementary?
Yeah,
to that?
please go ahead.
Is the information about the criteria necessary published with the waiting list? Do people know, or that's out there already? This isn't, they don't apply and then when they get approached find that out? Is that...
No, when we do send the invitation out for an offer of acceptance, we provide all the full information within that pack.
Councillor Avillius. Oh, sorry, Matt, do you have something to add?
Well, I was just going to, sorry, I was going to have one point to that about numbers of people. One of the important pieces of information here is that the waiting list has increased since you last took a decision that you were going to do it this way. So that would suggest that there is actually interest from people who know what the criteria is, and they've come along and joined the waiting list. I think that's something you perhaps want to have in mind when you think about numbers.
Thank you, that's an important point. Councillor Avillius.
Just wanted to check if we wanted to revisit those criteria, how difficult or impossible is that?
We would need to make a decision as a committee and then the executive and then the full council.
Yeah, that's right. But we, yeah, if we wanted to change the criteria, the vehicles, it would be a change in the policy. We'd bring that back to you and it would go through the same process we did last time, where ultimately it's full council that sanctions the change in the policy. But they tend to take on board your recommendations, I would suggest.
Councillor Nichols.
Yeah, it might not be allowed, but some of the questions I think Councillor Mason was asking, taxi guy sort of intimating, are we allowed to ask him for a view or is that not allowed? Just to give an opinion.
We're not really constituted to bring public participants back in. We have expert officers who have responded to what he said and given us their advice and their evidence. I mean, the figures that are being disputed are from the Institute of Licensing. So we've had several different experts now give us these numbers.
I'm not doubting the figure. I just a different opinion from a different point of view in terms of selling a license, for example. I mean, it's not fair to ask the office to answer a question that they can't really answer.
And that question is very acceptable, Chair.
So in terms of the value of the like the resale value
It's
of the
not, I
plane.
think it's fair to ask officers to answer questions that I don't think they can.
I mean, it's an unregulated market, so it's just whatever people are willing to pay, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, Will, do you have your opinion of that information?
It's not opinions that are facts. I know what place I've got, I know what place I've got now, this something in the past. What the people that are on the waiting list, I know what they have, I know why they're on the waiting list.
Okay, so we have rules that govern public participation and they don't allow for bringing someone back. And in terms of what information that we consider here, we need to get that information from our officers and our reliable evidence. And also, the decision we need to make today is about the unmet demand and how to meet that unmet demand as quickly and efficiently as possible. And in my view, the open market value of a taxi plate isn't relevant to that decision anyway. So I'm going to move us on to a different subject. And I had Councillor Mason's hand up next. But was that for that question?
In all that excitement, I've forgotten. I think actually I was going to tease more about this and ask about how long those 20 people have been on the list. I suppose trying to get back to the point of why we're looking at changing the system and option B, but how long have some of those people been on the list that are at the top of it now?
It can be years, I'm unsure, because obviously I came into the council last January and the list was already there. Matt might be able to answer better.
Well, I've been in this position since 2015 and the people on top of the list were the same people on the top of the list at that point. Yeah, so it's years, yeah.
Yeah, it's very possible that people at the top of the list now are turning down because they've moved away or moved into a different profession or whatever. Okay. Are there any more questions before we move into kind of discussing how to proceed? Councillor Kilbane?
Oh, thanks, Chair. It's not something that's in the report, but was raised by 3 of the different public speakers, which might also meet some of that, help with that unmet demand for wheelchair users. Was people asking if there could be a pre-booked system for wheelchair users, and assuming that means Hackney as well as minicab, because obviously minicabs are all pre-booked, but is that something that we can assist with as a local authority to try and make it easier for people who need a wheelchair accessible vehicle to do so? Because clearly it's having a major impact on people.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. What we've been working on very closely as a department is we've been working on what's classed as a 167 list, which the council has to publish on the website. That's been finished today and has gone out on the website today, which gives an accessible list of all wheelchair accessible vehicles and either the association or the private hire operator in which they're attached. I've been working closely with it this morning with our access officer, which is in the room at the bottom, which is David Smith. And we're looking at that being published, or it has been published on our website and is out and available for members of the public. In relation to Hackney Carriage vehicles, a number of Hackney Carriage vehicles at the moment do actually work from associations such as station taxis and others, which I'm led to believe will be coming onto the scene very, very soon as another association, which is going to provide a service with a telephone number.
Yeah, if I can just add to that. So important to stress that the wheelchair accessible vehicles, they were on the website, but they were in the open data section. What we've done is we've lifted that and put it into a more accessible bit of the website, an easier to find bit of the website. David's also put details of the operator or the association that they are affiliated to. So it's dead easy to see this is a wheelchair accessible vehicle. This is the operator, I need to call for it. So we put a lot more information up there. And then the other point to raise was in relation to it's gone. I'll come back to me. Sorry, it's gone. Yeah, there was another point, but it's gone. I'll come back to it if I remember.
When it comes back to you,
Yeah.
jump in. Councillor Mason?
Following Councillor Kilbane said, is that basically what the council's duty is? And then after that, it's up to commercial enterprises. Is there any examples of councils doing anything extra?
So that was my point. Yes, ultimately it's up to the operators. The operators operate the taxis, the vehicles, and they need to be doing what they can to encourage their drivers to make the vehicles more accessible. There is only so much the council can actually do in relation to this. One of the things, of course, is that new vehicles that come onto the new Hackneys that come on have to be wheelchair accessible. We think that they should be electric as well for all the reasons around the climate emergency that was declared and to clean up the air quality of the city. That's why we've gone for the two-pronged approach. But ultimately, it is down to the operators to try and encourage more drivers to take on wheelchair accessible vehicles and make them available at the times that they're required. Thank you, Councillor, for reminding me of my point.
Councillor Villiers?
Just following up on one of the public speakers and also from personal experience, is it legal for the taxi operators to refuse bookings around certain times for wheelchair accessible taxis? Because that is a real problem, that if it's before 10 o'clock in the morning or after a certain time in the afternoon, they won't take a booking. And is there anything we can do as a council there? And the other thing is about having a range of wheelchair accessible taxis through the day. Is there anything we can do in terms of working with operators to make sure that at all times of day there are wheelchair accessible vehicles available?
It's a difficult one, councillor, because all Hackney Carriage drivers as classed are all self-employed. If there is a vehicle available for a operator or a private hire operator within that remit, and there is a booking that needs to be undertaken, then that vehicle should be booked accordingly. It's very difficult, and we appreciate that, with advanced bookings, and it's something that we are trying to look at with all operators and associations to ensure that they can meet the criteria for taking advanced bookings, such as the problems that certain members of the public are experiencing at the moment, trying to get to doctor's appointments or hospital appointments. And we are looking at that very, very closely to see what we can do with operators and associations.
In terms of specific times of day, was that addressed adequately? Yeah.
I think so, yeah. I mean, I'm just wondering if like you do with pharmacies, you always have one that's open. Can we also have something that's on the council website saying, I don't know, yeah, so that people know which company is likely to have one at a certain time of day? And just making sure that there is one available, that all the wheelchair ones are not off in the evening and therefore there's no option in the evening.
Yeah, it wouldn't be available on our website, but that's part of the process that we're trying to work with operators to make sure that there's some availability at peak times for.
Councillor Rose?
Yeah, I think that's, some of these questions are veering away from the specific thing that we're asked here, but I'd quite like to ask another one that's slightly veering away from the point, but it is on the topic of disabilities in the city and how we can tackle the challenges that this situation causes. And that is, what are the protocols at taxi ranks around people who need accessible vehicles? Do they have to queue up at the back, wait till they get to the front, and then wait 7 cars for the first one to come along? Or are they, you have priority queues in other situations, but I don't recall ever having seen an 11 p.m. taxi rank where there's a separate queue or anything like that. Is that something that we're in control of and can change how that operates? Is there, referring back to the public participant who talked about not just booking ahead of time, but actually at the end of having a meal, going somewhere and getting a taxi at your first opportunity, that sort of thing?
Yeah, at the taxi ranks, it's a very, very difficult one. I mean, we do now have marshals working every Friday and Saturday night to look at the queues within taxi ranks. The marshals will actually try and help and assist wheelchair sort of users and anybody that's wanting a accessible vehicle by moving people along that queue to assist. But normally it will be queue up in that vehicle and wait for a vehicle to become available. You can actually approach any vehicle within that queue, but there's normally agreement to go to the first one at the head of the queue. But like I say, it's something that we can look at moving forward with the marshals.
Yes, well, we have the opportunity, we have officers here, we can ask all sorts of questions. I know it's very tempting because we're all massive licensing nerds and want to ask everything, but it would be good if we could try and keep it on topic of exactly what the situation is that we're trying to resolve and how we go about doing that. So I've seen Councillor Mason, then Councillor Kilbane, and then Councillor Widdowson, and then Councillor Wells.
Just to go off the back of that, could I suggest that we look at putting some signage up at ranks we've got control of, just saying, please give priority to disabled customers if there's a accessible vehicle? And can I also suggest that we approve option B, if someone wants to second it?
Thank you. Councillor Kilbane.
Just on the marshals question, can I just check, are they our marshals, CYC marshals, or are they York bid marshals?
The York bid marshals that have been trained.
I think it's jointly funded by
So
York bid, the
funded by
council,
City of York
and
Council,
ward
yeah.
funding.
Ward, yeah. Very, and I think some businesses chip in as well. I think there's some local businesses that chip in. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Widdowson. So we've had option 2 seconded. Brilliant. I hope we're moving towards resolving something. Councillor Wells, you have something to add first?
No, I was going to move straight back to the point. Given that we've offered the opportunity of 10 people that have possibly been waiting 10 years for a licence, and none of them have wanted to take us up on the offer, do we have a plan B if 100 in we're wanting 10 licenses? What if we don't get all of those out of the 180 people that are waiting?
Yeah, we'll come back here. We'll come back here and say that plan hasn't worked, and look at other options. But we could at least go down the list, I think, first.
Just building on what you said earlier, Matthew, is my understanding is that nearly 40 people have joined this list. So looking, if my memory serves me correctly, the top 10, 20, 30 people have been there for quite a long time. So their circumstances may have changed because it's not a dynamic list. They're on the list. So they may have decided they wanted to be a taxi driver 5 years ago. Circumstances have changed, they've changed their mind. 37 people have joined the list since this has been circulated, which suggests there may be an appetite. Now, it may or may not work, we don't know, but it suggests that there's an appetite to do that. So if it doesn't work, yes, I'm sure the officers will come back with an expert opinion on how to move forward.
I absolutely agree. Councillor Rose and then Councillor Kilbane.
This question is on topic. If we vote through option B2, whichever one it is, tonight, how long will it be until everyone will have been engaged? If, you know, on the totality of that list, how long does it take to get that ask out to them?
Yeah, those letters will go out within 14 days. So there'll be a month.
Thank you.
Councillor Kilbane?
I was just trying to, are we in debate now about what option to go for?
Yeah.
Okay, great. I think, I mean, essentially, we've got a difference of opinion, haven't we, between the trade and the council officers. In the trade are saying it's because the vehicles are too expensive, nobody's going to pick it up, you can't make a living doing it. Officers are saying, well, actually, we've got, you know, lots of people who want the licenses. So the only way that we can find that out is to go for 2, isn't it? Option 2, to flush it through as quickly as possible. If that satisfies it and we get the 10 licenses taken up, great. We've got 10 more wheelchair accessible vehicles on the roads. If it doesn't, then coming back to us as quickly as possible to look at what we're doing and whether or not we're taking the right approach. So I'd go with that. And I just want to, and as a general comment in supporting option 2 on those grounds, the wheelchair accessible vehicles, it's the same as we have with the buses. We're trying to provide a service that people need on a commercial basis. And sometimes it just doesn't work. You can't get a wheelchair friendly, wheelchair accessible taxi at 8 o'clock in the morning because they're on the school runs. You know, and that's, you know, people have bought the taxis to do that with them, and they might not want to work at other times of the day, and that's up to them because it's their business. You know, so it's kind of that we're trying to square a circle as with all these things that are very difficult to square. So let's just go with option 2. Let's get it through as quickly as possible, and hopefully we'll fill the licenses. If we don't, we'll back to us ASAP, and then we'll go through that whole rigmarole of getting it through council.
Yes, so officers have identified this problem and the options are on page 17. Option 2 is a solution that officers have come up with. Has anyone on the committee had any other ideas instead or in addition to the ideas that officers have come up with? Councillor Rose?
Yeah, I think option 2 is the right option for now. I think we should ask to bring to January the report on how many we had on that, and along with some other options. If 70% of the list says great, but they're all way down the list, that solves that problem. If 5% of people say they're interested, 95% say that they don't, we do need to revisit the rules around this. So can we not delay it longer by then only asking for that in January, and then it's March and so on? Can we start that process of gathering the appropriate information about second-hand prices and all the other collateral we'll need in January to make that decision, please?
Okay, so shall we take a vote on option 2, and then the next agenda item, which is work plan, we'll add that to the list? Yeah. Everyone has read and understood option 2. I don't need to read it out. Everyone's clear on what we're voting for. Excellent. So all those in favour of option 2, please show your hands. And that's unanimous. Excellent. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. So yes, the final agenda item. Oh yes, sorry. Thank you, officers, for identifying that problem and coming up with some solutions. The final agenda item is the work plan. So this has been newly added as a standing agenda item. Thank you, Councillor Mason. But as a committee, we haven't really done any work planning yet. So it's looking a little bit sparse at the moment. There's obviously a lot of reactive things that come up. You know, if a license is applied for an operator's license or for a sex establishment license, obviously we will have to do that as and when it needs determining. And then what I'm going to propose is that after this meeting, we find a time and an appropriate way to do some work planning on what other policies people on the committee want to, you know, review or look at the effectiveness of and that sort of thing. We've got quite a few things already to put on that list, and we just need to work out the best way to manage it all. So we've had a committee member ask if we can have a look at the statement of sex establishment licensing policy. We've had a member of the public talk about the pavement cafe licensing policy. Another member of the public asking about a whole range of policies to do with various things to do with licensing. So does anybody have anything they would like to say about what is currently in the papers on the work plan, and, you know, with the agreement that we will ASAP outside this meeting actually do some work planning? Councillor Mason.
Thanks, and I do need to shoot off in a minute, because I've got a meeting to chair. But I would say, I think the comments Gwen made were interesting about looking at all licenses. And I know we did add some to us through the constitution, I think probably around cafes and things that we never really had oversight before, but other things would be interesting. I think the one about composition of panels, particularly more things about sitting in your own ward, because I know, like we said, for planning, actually you can sit on an application in your own ward. And if that is a local rule, maybe just refreshing what the subcommittee rules are, and just at least having some oversight of it, so we know for the next 3 years what we're doing. I think, and yeah, just the enforcement around pavement cafes and board licensing would be useful. Thank you.
Thanks. Councillor Widdowson.
Probably building a little bit on that, if we could bring forward the enforcement update, but actually have a look at it across the whole of the council, because a number of complaints come from residents about it's not enforced. Whatever type of licensing it is that we're talking about, whether it's planning, whether it's licensing here for the vehicles, whatever it is, and I'm not sure it's this committee it sits in, but enforcement in general is seen as a bit of a hot potato amongst a significant number of residents.
Yeah, I don't think we can look at things like planning enforcement, but there's a whole range of licensing and enforcements that we can, yeah, have a look at. Absolutely. Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Rose and then Councillor Kent.
Yeah, I know I said it 5 seconds ago, but can we put on the January list to the Hackney Carriage licensing rules review, and not wait for a secondary meeting to look at where we slot it in? Because it is clear that it has, and from the equality assessment impact assessment today, it also says high across the board in all these categories. If we don't have 10 forthcoming, we need to crack on with the next options. So can we put them on January regardless of what we've got, if that's okay? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, sorry, I should have written that down at the time. Yeah, Councillor Kent.
So could we, if we're suggesting items now, in June or July, we approved an increase in fares, and we asked at the time, is there any feedback on what impact that has on different types of community? And also, is there ever an assessment of whether they should go down again? So can that be slotted in somewhere? Thank you.
Great. Yes, if anyone has any other ideas, we will do proper work planning when you'll be able to discuss all those ideas. So is that everything for now? All right, perfect. That's everything on the agenda. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time.